The Tennessee sun hung low on the horizon, painting the rolling hills in shades of gold and amber as Reba McEntire's black SUV cruised down Highway 70. The familiar landscape brought a sense of peace to her weary soul after 3 consecutive sold-out shows in Nashville. Her manager, Jake Morrison, sat in the passenger seat, scrolling through his phone and discussing the next leg of their tour. "We've got the venue in Memphis locked down for Friday night," Jake said, glancing up from his device. "The promoters are expecting another sellout crowd. Your fan base down there is incredible, Reba." Reba nodded absently, her eyes focused on the scenic route ahead. She had specifically chosen this longer path instead of the interstate, craving the therapeutic beauty of rural Tennessee. The rolling pastures dotted with grazing cattle and the occasional farmhouse reminded her of her Oklahoma roots, where her love for country music first took flight. "You know, Jake," she said, adjusting her sunglasses, "sometimes I think these quiet roads hold more magic than any concert hall." As they rounded a gentle curve near the small town of Waverly, something caught Reba's attention. On the gravel shoulder ahead, a small figure stood beside a makeshift wooden table. Even from a distance, she could see colorful wildflowers arranged in mason jars, creating a rainbow of natural beauty against the rustic backdrop. "Slow down a bit," Reba instructed her driver, David Chen, who had been with her for over 5 years. "I want to see what that little one is selling." As they approached, the scene became clearer. A young boy, no more than 8 or 9 years old, stood behind his flower stand with unwavering determination, despite the obvious lack of customers on this quiet stretch of road. His clothes were clean, but clearly well worn, a faded Superman t-shirt and jeans with carefully patched knees. His light brown hair caught the afternoon sunlight, and his earnest blue eyes tracked every passing vehicle with hope. "Pull over, David," Reba said softly, her heart already touched by the sight. Jake looked up, surprised. "Reba, we really should stick to the schedule. The hotel is expecting us, and you have that radio interview tomorrow morning." "Some things are more important than schedules," Reba replied, her voice carrying the gentle firmness that had made her not just a country music legend, but a respected businesswoman. "This'll just take a minute." The SUV pulled onto the shoulder with a soft crunch of gravel. As Reba stepped out, the warm Tennessee air enveloped her, carrying the sweet scent of honeysuckle and fresh grass. The little boy's eyes widened as he recognized her, but he maintained his composure with admirable maturity. "Good afternoon, young man," Reba said, approaching the flower stand with genuine interest. "These are absolutely beautiful. Did you pick them yourself?" The boy nodded earnestly, his small hands clasping behind his back. "Yes, ma'am. I'm Tommy Bradley. I pick them fresh every morning from the meadow behind our house. Grandma Elena taught me which ones last the longest and smell the prettiest." Reba knelt down to examine the flowers more closely, genuinely impressed by the careful arrangements. Each mason jar held a thoughtful combination of colors and textures. Purple wildflowers mixed with white daisies, bright yellow black-eyed Susans paired with delicate pink wild roses. The arrangements showed an artistic eye that seemed far beyond the boy's years. "These are professional quality, Tommy," Reba said, meaning every word. "Your grandmother sounds like a wise woman. How long have you been selling flowers out here?" Tommy's expression grew more serious, a shadow crossing his young features. "About 6 months now, Miss McEntire. Ever since Grandma got real sick and couldn't teach piano lessons anymore. The doctor bills are pretty expensive, so I figured I should help however I can." The simple honesty in his words hit Reba like a physical blow. Here was a child who should be playing baseball or video games, instead taking on adult responsibilities with the quiet dignity of someone far older. She felt Jake and David behind her, both men equally moved by the boy's story. "How much for this beautiful arrangement?" Reba asked, pointing to a particularly stunning jar filled with a mix of wildflowers that seemed to capture the essence of the Tennessee countryside. $5, ma'am," Tommy replied. "But for you, since you're Reba McEntire and you make such pretty music, I could do $4. Reba's heart swelled. "Oh no, honey, beautiful work deserves full price." She reached into her purse and pulled out a $20 bill. "I'll take 4 arrangements. Keep the change." Tommy's eyes widened as he stared at the money. "Miss McEntire, that's too much. I don't have change for a 20. "That's not change, sweetheart," Reba said gently. "That's payment for the most beautiful flowers I've seen in Tennessee, plus a tip for excellent customer service." As Tommy carefully selected 4 of his best arrangements, his hands trembling slightly with excitement, Reba found herself wanting to know more. "Tell me about your grandmother, Tommy. What kind of sickness does she have?" The boy's face grew worried as he wrapped the jars carefully in newspaper. "The doctors say it's something with her heart. She gets real tired and has trouble breathing sometimes. She used to teach piano to lots of kids in town, but now she mostly just rests. She still tries to teach me, though, when she's feeling up to it." "You play piano?" Reba asked, her interest piqued. Tommy nodded, a small smile breaking through his serious expression. "Grandma says I have good hands for it. She's teaching me some of your songs, actually. Sweet Dreams is my favorite." Reba felt tears threatening to form behind her sunglasses. The image of this brave little boy learning her songs on an old piano while caring for his sick grandmother painted a picture that would stay with her forever. "Where do you and your grandmother live, Tommy?" she asked gently. "Just about 2 miles down Hickory Lane." He pointed toward a narrow dirt road that branched off from the highway. "It's the little white house with the blue shutters. Used to be Grandpa's, but he passed when I was 5. Reba glanced back at Jake and David, both of whom were watching the exchange with obvious emotion. She made a decision that would change all their lives. "Tommy, I want you to give your grandmother my best wishes for a speedy recovery. And I want you to know that you're one of the bravest, most hard-working young men I've ever met." As she carefully placed the flower arrangements in her SUV, Reba's mind was already working. She had built her career not just on talent, but on the values her parents had instilled in her: kindness, generosity, and the importance of lifting others up. This little boy and his grandmother represented everything she believed in about the strength of small-town America. "Thank you so much, Miss McEntire," Tommy called out as she prepared to leave. "This money will buy Grandma's medicine for 2 whole weeks." As they drove away, Reba watched Tommy in the side mirror, carefully folding the $20 bill and placing it in a small metal box. The image burned itself into her memory. A child taking care of his family with the same determination that had driven her own rise to stardom. "David, make a note of this location," Reba said quietly. "And Jake, I want you to do some research on heart specialists in Nashville. The best ones money can buy." "Reba, what are you planning?" Jake asked, though the fond smile on his face suggested he already knew. "I'm planning to do what my mama and daddy taught me," she replied, her voice thick with emotion. "When you're blessed with success, you share it with those who need it most." As the sun continued its descent toward the Tennessee hills, Reba McEntire's SUV disappeared around the bend, leaving Tommy Bradley alone with his flowers, but no longer alone in the world. Though he didn't know it yet, his life had just intersected with a force of nature who was about to prove that sometimes miracles come disguised as chance encounters on quiet country roads. The first chapter of an extraordinary journey had begun, set in motion by wildflowers, honest work, and a country music legend who had never forgotten the values that made her who she was. 3 days after her encounter with Tommy Bradley, Reba found herself unable to concentrate on anything else. During her Memphis concert, she had dedicated Sweet Dreams to a special young man in Tennessee who reminds us all what courage looks like. The crowd had cheered, but they couldn't have imagined the real story behind her words. Back in her Nashville penthouse, Reba stared out at the city lights while Jake Morrison presented his research findings. The information he had gathered painted a picture that was both heartbreaking and inspiring. Elena Bradley, aged 67, Jake read from his tablet. Widowed 3 years ago when her husband Robert died in a farming accident. She was a music teacher at Waverly Elementary for 32 years before retiring early due to congestive heart failure. She's been Tommy's guardian since his parents died in a car crash when he was 4. Reba closed her eyes, absorbing the weight of the family's tragedies. Medical bills? Substantial, Jake continued. She's been treated at Vanderbilt Medical Center, but the costs have eaten through their savings. The house is mortgaged to the limit, and she's been surviving on a small pension and what Tommy makes with his flower sales. And the boy's musical ability? Jake's expression brightened slightly. I spoke with Jennifer Walsh, the current music teacher at Waverly Elementary. She says Tommy is extraordinarily gifted. Apparently, Elena still brings him to school occasionally for informal lessons, and Jennifer is amazed by his natural talent. She says he plays by ear better than students who've had formal training for years. Reba turned from the window, her decision crystallizing. I want to meet Elena Bradley. Reba, are you sure about this? Jake asked gently. Getting personally involved could complicate things. Maybe we could just make an anonymous donation. No, Reba said firmly. Anonymous help is fine for some situations, but this family deserves to know that someone cares about them personally. I want to look Elena Bradley in the eyes and tell her that her grandson is going to be okay. The next morning dawned crisp and clear as Reba's SUV turned down Hickory Lane. The dirt road was narrow and winding, lined with towering oak trees that created a natural canopy overhead. Wild roses grew along old fence posts, and the air was filled with the songs of mockingbirds and the distant lowing of cattle. The Bradley house appeared around a gentle curve, a modest white clapboard home with faded blue shutters, exactly as Tommy had described. A wraparound porch held 2 rocking chairs and several potted geraniums that showed Elena's attempt to maintain beauty despite their circumstances. An old piano was visible through the front window, and Reba could hear the faint sound of music drifting from within. That's Tommy playing, Reba said softly, recognizing the melody of Sweet Dreams being picked out on the keys. She approached the front door alone, having asked Jake and David to wait in the car. The music stopped as her footsteps crossed the wooden porch, and she could hear quiet voices inside before the door opened. Elena Bradley was a small woman with silver hair pulled back into a neat bun and kind brown eyes that held the wisdom of someone who had faced life's hardships with grace. Despite her illness, she carried herself with dignity, wearing a simple blue dress that had been carefully mended in places. Mrs. Bradley, Reba said gently, I'm Reba McEntire. I met your grandson Tommy a few days ago at his flower stand. Elena's eyes widened with recognition and surprise, but she quickly recovered her composure. Miss McEntire, what an unexpected pleasure. Please, come in. Tommy told me about meeting you, but I hardly dared believe it. The interior of the house was small but immaculate, filled with the kind of warmth that comes from years of love and laughter. Family photographs lined the mantelpiece, including several of a young couple Reba assumed were Tommy's parents. The piano, an old upright model that had seen better days, dominated one corner of the living room. Tommy appeared from the kitchen, his face lighting up with joy and surprise. Miss McEntire, you came to visit. I promised I'd give your grandmother my best wishes, Reba said, ruffling his hair affectionately. "And I wanted to hear you play piano." That sounded beautiful. Elena gestured toward the small sofa, her breathing slightly labored from the excitement. "Please, sit down. Can I offer you some sweet tea? It's not much, but it's made with love." As they settled into conversation, Reba was struck by Elena's quiet dignity and strength. Despite her obvious illness and financial struggles, the woman spoke with pride about Tommy's accomplishments and her years of teaching music to local children. "Tommy has a gift," Elena said, watching her grandson with obvious adoration. "I've taught hundreds of children over the years, but I've never seen natural ability like his. He hears a song once and can play it back perfectly. He makes up his own melodies, too. Beautiful ones that seem to come from somewhere deep in his soul. Grandma taught me everything I know," Tommy added, moving to sit beside Elena on the piano bench. "She says music is like a language that everyone can understand, no matter where they're from." "Your grandmother is absolutely right," Reba agreed, her heart swelling as she watched the obvious love between them. "Music has taken me all over the world, and it's always been the one thing that connects me to people everywhere." Elena's eyes grew thoughtful. "I used to dream of studying music in Nashville when I was young, but life took me in different directions. Marriage, teaching, raising my own children, and now Tommy. I've never regretted those choices, but sometimes I wonder what might have been. It's never too late for dreams to come true," Reba said carefully. "Sometimes they just take different forms than we expected." As the afternoon wore on, Reba learned more about the Bradley family's struggles. Elena's medical bills had drained their savings, and she was facing the possibility of losing the house where she had raised her own children and where Tommy's parents had grown up. The piano lessons that had once provided supplemental income were no longer possible due to her declining health. "I worry most about Tommy's future," Elena admitted during a quiet moment when the boy was in the kitchen preparing more tea. "He's so smart and talented, but I don't know how long I can provide for him. My sister in Memphis has offered to take him if something happens to me, but she doesn't understand music. I'm afraid his gift will be wasted." Reba leaned forward, her voice gentle but firm. "Elena, what if I told you that Tommy's gift doesn't have to be wasted? What if there were ways to make sure he gets the musical education he deserves?" Elena's eyes filled with tears. "Miss McEntire, I couldn't accept charity. We've always made our own way." "This isn't about charity," Reba interrupted softly. "This is about recognizing exceptional talent and making sure it has a chance to flourish. Tommy reminds me of myself at his age, full of music and dreams, but needing someone to believe in those dreams." When Tommy returned with the tea, served in mismatched but carefully cleaned cups, Reba asked him to play something for her. He chose Coal Miner's Daughter, and as his small fingers moved across the keys, Reba felt chills run down her spine. The boy didn't just play the melody, he interpreted it, adding subtle variations and emotional nuances that spoke of an innate understanding of music that couldn't be taught. "Tommy," Reba said when he finished, "that was absolutely beautiful. You didn't just play that song, you made it your own." The boy beamed with pride, but it was Elena's expression that touched Reba most deeply. Despite her illness and worries, the older woman glowed with joy at seeing her grandson's talent appreciated by someone who truly understood music. As the visit drew to a close, Reba made her intentions clear. "Elena, I want to help your family, not because I feel sorry for you, but because I see something special here that deserves to be nurtured." "Miss McEntire, I don't know what to say," Elena whispered, tears flowing freely now. "Say yes," Reba replied simply. "Say yes to letting me help Tommy develop his musical gifts. Say yes to getting the medical care you need so you can watch him grow into the musician he's meant to be. Say yes to accepting help from someone who understands that music is worth fighting for. Elena looked at Tommy, who was watching the exchange with wide, hopeful eyes. She thought of all the dreams she had nurtured over the years, her own abandoned aspirations, her students' successes, and now her grandson's unlimited potential. "Yes," she said finally, her voice strong despite her tears. "Yes, for Tommy's sake, I say yes." As Reba prepared to leave, she knelt down to Tommy's level. "I want you to keep practicing and keep picking those beautiful flowers. But most importantly, I want you to keep taking care of your grandmother. She's your greatest treasure, and you're hers." "I will, Miss McEntire," Tommy promised solemnly, "and thank you for believing in me." Driving back toward Nashville, Reba felt a sense of purpose she hadn't experienced in years. She had built a successful career by sharing her gift with the world, but now she had the chance to nurture a new gift, to help a young boy achieve dreams that might otherwise be lost to circumstance. "Jake," she said, pulling out her phone, "I want you to contact Dr. Elizabeth Harrison at Vanderbilt Medical Center. She's supposed to be the best cardiac specialist in the state. And then call my accountant. We're going to be making some investments in the future." As the Tennessee countryside rolled past the window, Reba McEntire smiled, knowing that sometimes the most important performances happen not on stage, but in small living rooms where dreams are born and hope is kindled. The Bradley family's story was just beginning, and she intended to be part of writing its happiest chapters. 2 weeks after her visit to the Bradley home, Reba McEntire stood in the cardiac wing of Vanderbilt Medical Center, watching as Dr. Elizabeth Harrison explained Elena's treatment options. The renowned specialist, a woman in her 50s, with compassionate eyes and an authoritative manner, had agreed to take Elena's case personally after Reba's call. "Mrs. Bradley's condition is serious but manageable with proper care," Dr. Harrison explained to the small group gathered in her office. "She'll need medication adjustments, regular monitoring, and some lifestyle changes. The good news is that with proper treatment, she can expect to have many good years ahead of her." Elena sat quietly, overwhelmed by the attention and care she was receiving. Tommy held her hand tightly, his eyes wide as he listened to the medical terminology he didn't fully understand, but knew was important for his grandmother's health. "What about the cost?" Elena asked hesitantly, the worry evident in her voice. Dr. Harrison glanced at Reba, who nodded almost imperceptibly. "Mrs. Bradley, your treatment is being covered by the McEntire Foundation's Medical Assistance Program. You don't need to worry about the financial aspect. Your job is to focus on getting well." As they left the hospital, Elena was quiet, still processing everything that had happened. Reba had not only arranged for the best medical care available, but had done so with such grace and dignity that Elena never felt like a charity case. "Miss McEntire," Elena said as they reached the car, "I don't know how to thank you for this." "You don't need to thank me," Reba replied warmly. "Just get better so you can watch Tommy grow up. That's all the thanks I need." The drive back to Hickory Lane was filled with a comfortable silence, broken occasionally by Tommy's excited chatter about the hospital and all the machines he had seen. When they arrived at the Bradley house, Reba had one more surprise waiting. Parked in the driveway was a delivery truck, and several men were carefully carrying a beautiful baby grand piano toward the house. Tommy's jaw dropped as he watched the pristine black instrument being maneuvered through the front door. "Miss McEntire, what's happening?" he asked in amazement. "Every serious musician needs a serious instrument," Reba explained with a smile. "That old upright has served you well, but it's time for an upgrade. This piano was made by Steinway & Sons. one of the finest piano makers in the world. Elena sank into one of the porch chairs, tears streaming down her face, as she watched the delivery team carefully position the magnificent instrument in her living room. The contrast between the elegant piano and their modest surroundings was striking, but somehow it fit perfectly, as if the room had always been waiting for such beauty. "I can't accept this," Elena whispered, but her protests were weak, overwhelmed by the joy she saw in Tommy's eyes. "It's not for you," Reba said gently. "It's for Tommy, and for every student you'll teach in the years to come. This piano is an investment in the future of music." Once the delivery team had finished their work and left, Tommy approached the piano with reverence, his small hands barely able to reach the keys properly. When he played his first notes, the rich, full sound that filled the room was breathtaking. The difference between this instrument and the old upright was like the difference between a whisper and a symphony. "Listen to that tone," Elena marveled, her musical ear immediately recognizing the superior quality. "Tommy, do you hear how each note sings?" Over the following weeks, the transformation of the Bradley family's life continued in ways both large and small. Reba arranged for Tommy to begin formal lessons with Patricia Williams, one of Nashville's most respected piano teachers. Patricia, a former concert pianist who now taught select students, had been skeptical about taking on a young boy from rural Tennessee until she heard him play. "This child is extraordinary," Patricia told Reba after Tommy's first lesson. "His technical skills need work, but his musicality is already at a professional level. I've taught students for 30 years, and I've rarely encountered such natural ability." Elena's health improved steadily under Dr. Harrison's care. The new medications gave her more energy, and the reduction in financial stress seemed to lift years from her appearance. She began to smile more often and even started giving piano lessons again to a few local children, using both the new grand piano and her old upright, which they had moved to Tommy's bedroom. "Having two pianos in the house is like having two heartbeats," Elena told Reba during one of her regular visits. "The music never stops, and that's exactly how it should be." Reba's visits to Hickory Lane became a cherished routine. She would arrive unannounced, sometimes bringing takeout from Tommy's favorite restaurant in town. Other times bringing sheet music or recordings of classical pieces she thought he should hear. These informal gatherings became precious to all three of them, filled with music, laughter, and the deep conversations that bind people together across generations and circumstances. During one such visit, Tommy played a piece he had composed himself, a hauntingly beautiful melody that seemed to capture both sadness and hope in equal measure. "What do you call this piece?" Reba asked, moved by the depth of emotion in the boy's composition. "I call it Grandma's Song," Tommy replied simply. "It's about how she takes care of me even when she doesn't feel good, and how music makes everything better." Elena wiped away tears as she listened to her grandson's explanation. "He's been working on that piece for weeks," she said. "Sometimes I hear him playing it late at night when he thinks I'm sleeping. It's his way of processing everything that's happened." Reba recorded the performance on her phone, knowing she was witnessing the emergence of a truly gifted composer as well as performer. "Tommy, this piece is beautiful. Have you thought about what you want to do with your music when you grow up?" Tommy's eyes grew serious as he considered the question. "I want to help people feel better, like your songs do. And I want to take care of Grandma forever. So maybe I could perform and teach, like she does." "Those are wonderful goals," Reba said, struck by the boy's maturity and selflessness. "But remember, you can dream even bigger than that. Music can take you anywhere in the world you want to go." As autumn arrived in Tennessee, the changes in the Bradley family were remarkable. Elena had regained much of her strength and was teaching piano to 8 students using the income to rebuild their savings. Tommy was excelling in his lessons with Patricia Williams and had even performed in a small recital in Nashville, where he received a standing ovation from an audience that included several music industry professionals. But perhaps the most significant change was in their relationship with Reba, which had evolved from benefactor and recipients to genuine friendship. Reba found herself looking forward to her visits to Hickory Lane as much as her professional commitments. The simple warmth of the Bradley home and the authentic love between grandmother and grandson provided a grounding influence in her often hectic life. "You know," Elena said during one of their evening conversations on the porch, "when Robert died, I thought the music had gone out of our lives forever. Between my illness and worrying about Tommy's future, I felt like we were just surviving instead of living." "And now?" Reba asked, though she could see the answer in Elena's restored vitality and Tommy's growing confidence. "Now I see that music never really leaves. Sometimes it just gets quiet for a while until the right person comes along to turn up the volume again," Elena replied with a smile. "You didn't just give us a piano or medical care, Reba. You gave us hope. And hope is what makes all music possible." As they sat listening to Tommy practice inside, his fingers dancing across the keys with increasing skill and artistry, Reba reflected on how this chance encounter had enriched her own life. She had always believed that success meant sharing your blessings with others, but the Bradley family had taught her that sometimes the person doing the giving receives just as much in return. "I have something I want to discuss with both of you," Reba said, her voice taking on the tone she used when making important announcements. "I've been thinking about Tommy's future, and I have an idea that might interest you." Tommy stopped playing and joined them on the porch, settling cross-legged on the wooden floor between the two women who had become the guiding forces in his young life. "What kind of idea?" Elena asked, though her smile suggested she was prepared for another of Reba's generous surprises. "Well," Reba said, her eyes twinkling with excitement, "it involves a stage, some bright lights, and about 15,000 country music fans who I think would love to meet a very special young pianist from Tennessee." The third chapter of their journey was ending, but as Tommy's eyes widened with anticipation and Elena gasped with understanding, it was clear that the most exciting developments were still ahead. The Grand Ole Opry House stood majestically against the Nashville skyline as Reba McEntire's car pulled into the performer's entrance. Beside her, Tommy Bradley pressed his face to the window, his eyes wide with wonder as he took in the legendary venue where country music's greatest stars had performed for generations. "Is this really where you're going to perform tonight?" Tommy asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "We're going to perform tonight," Reba corrected gently. "Remember, you're not just here to watch anymore." Elena Bradley sat on Tommy's other side, dressed in her best blue dress and clutching a small purse nervously. The past month had been a whirlwind of preparation since Reba had extended her extraordinary invitation. Tommy would join her on stage during her Grand Ole Opry performance, playing piano for a special acoustic version of Sweet Dreams. "I still can't believe this is happening," Elena murmured, shaking her head in amazement. "6 months ago, we were worried about paying for groceries, and now my grandson is about to perform at the Grand Ole Opry." The invitation had come after Tommy's remarkable performance at a Nashville music showcase that Reba had arranged through her connections. Music industry professionals, including several talent scouts and recording executives, had been stunned by the 9-year-old's mature interpretation of classical pieces and his original compositions. "That boy doesn't just play music," veteran producer Jack Henderson had told Reba after the showcase. "He understands it on a level that most adults never reach. Whatever you're doing to nurture his talent, don't stop." Now, as they walked through the backstage corridors of the most famous venue in country music, Tommy tried to absorb everything around him. Gold records lined the walls, and photographs of country music legends gazed down from every surface. The air seemed to vibrate with the history of countless performances and the dreams that had been realized on the sacred stage ahead. Miss McEntire, a young woman with a clipboard and headset, approached them efficiently. I'm Jessica Parker, the stage manager. We're so excited about tonight's special performance. Tommy, are you ready for sound check? Tommy nodded solemnly, his hand finding Elena's for reassurance. Despite weeks of preparation and several rehearsals, the magnitude of the moment was beginning to sink in. The sound check went flawlessly. Tommy's small fingers moved confidently across the piano keys as he and Reba ran through Sweet Dreams several times, adjusting the microphone levels and stage lighting to accommodate their duet. The few technicians and crew members present stopped their work to listen, recognizing they were witnessing something special. "You're a natural, kiddo," said Billy Crawford, the Opry's longtime sound engineer. "I've seen a lot of performers on this stage, and you've got that special something that can't be taught." As showtime approached, the Opry House began to fill with eager fans. Reba's performances were always popular, but word had somehow leaked about the special guest, and anticipation was running high throughout the venue. In the green room, Reba found Tommy sitting quietly with Elena, both of them looking nervous but excited. The boy was dressed in a small black suit that Reba had helped Elena select, and he looked remarkably mature for his 9 years. "How are you feeling, sweetheart?" Reba asked, kneeling beside Tommy's chair. "A little scared," Tommy admitted honestly, "but mostly excited. Grandma says that when you get the chance to share music with people, it's like giving them a gift." "Your grandmother is absolutely right," Reba agreed. "And tonight, you're going to give 15,000 people a gift they'll never forget." Elena took Reba's hands in hers, her eyes shining with gratitude and pride. "I never dreamed that buying flowers from a roadside stand would lead to this moment. You've given Tommy opportunities I could never have provided, and I'll be grateful for the rest of my life." "Elena, you gave Tommy something far more valuable than I ever could," Reba replied sincerely. "You gave him love, values, and the foundation that makes all of this possible. I just opened a few doors. He's the one with the talent to walk through them." The opening acts performed to enthusiastic applause, building excitement for the evening's headliner. When Reba finally took the stage, the crowd erupted in the kind of sustained ovation that only comes from genuine affection and respect. She performed several of her hit songs, connecting with the audience through the storytelling and emotional honesty that had made her a country music icon. "Tonight is extra special for me," Reba told the audience as she prepared to introduce Tommy. "A few months ago, I met a young man who reminded me why I fell in love with music in the first place. He's 9 years old, he lives with his grandmother in a little house in Tennessee, and he has more musical talent in his little finger than most people have in their entire bodies. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome my friend Tommy Bradley." The spotlight found Tommy as he walked onto the stage with remarkable composure. His small figure dwarfed by the massive venue, but radiating confidence. He took his place at the piano, adjusted the bench height, and looked out at the sea of faces with a smile that melted hearts throughout the auditorium. "Hi, everyone," Tommy said into his microphone, his young voice clear and strong. "This song means a lot to me because it's one of the first songs my grandma taught me to play. She always says that sweet dreams are what keep us going when times get tough." Judy Palm. As Tommy began to play the opening notes of Sweet Dreams, a hush fell over the entire venue. His interpretation was both faithful to the original and uniquely his own, with subtle variations that showed his growing sophistication as a musician. When Reba joined in with the vocals, the combination of her legendary voice and his exceptional piano accompaniment created something magical. The performance was flawless, but more than that, it was deeply moving. Tommy didn't just play the notes, he played the emotion behind them, conveying the hope and resilience that the song represented. In the audience, grown men wiped away tears, and veteran country music fans found themselves witnessing what they knew was a star in the making. As the final notes faded away, the silence stretched for a long moment before exploding into the loudest, most sustained ovation in recent Grand Ole Opry history. The audience rose as one, applauding not just for the performance, but for the story behind it, the triumph of talent and determination over adversity. Tommy stood beside Reba, overwhelmed by the response, but handling it with the grace and humility that Elena had instilled in him. He bowed politely, then did something that brought the house down. He gestured toward the wings where Elena was watching, tears streaming down her face, and blew her a kiss. "Ladies and gentlemen," Reba said when the applause finally died down, "I have a feeling we're going to be hearing a lot more from Tommy Bradley in the years to come. Remember where you saw him first." Backstage, Tommy was surrounded by well-wishers, music industry professionals, and fellow performers, all eager to congratulate him on his stunning debut. Elena stood nearby, accepting congratulations and trying to process everything that was happening to her family. Mrs. Bradley, a distinguished man in an expensive suit, approached her. "I'm Michael Roberts from Mercury Records, Nashville. That young man of yours has something very special. When he's ready, we'd love to discuss his future."